Welcome everyone to Rules Explained. In this episode, we are going over the creature that ate Sheboygan. I'm John Merritt.
I'm Rob Nothing.
Let's get stomping. So the creature that ate Sheboygan. What is this game all about?
It's all about kaiju. It's all about monsters. It's all about destruction. It's all about the imminent demise of a small town in Wisconsin. And if we don't stop the monster there, it's off to Milwaukee, and it's off to Chicago. Right down 94 it goes.
I just think it's funny, with the title being The Creature That Ate Sheboygan. Is that like a hoagie or a sandwich? Or, they never really give. Yeah, I mean, if you don't live in the Midwest in the United States, you would never know that Sheboygan is a town in Wisconsin.
Dude, I grew up and I liked this game, and I thought Sheboygan was a made-up name.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, cool. Some sort of random, made-up name. Sheboygan sounds like a funny town, but heaven forbid, it's a real actual place.
Wow, that's cool. So when did this game come out? 1979.
1979.
Did this come out in Dragon Magazine?
Nope. This is an SPI, a Simulations Publications Incorporated game. SPI was one of the major game companies that existed along with Avalon Hill at the beginning of the gaming, shall we say, birth. Mm-hmm. It competed with Avalon Hill for the creation of a wide variety of war games. Fans of the Big Bang Theory will recognize the SPI company when you talk about the game Campaign for North Africa, considered to be the most complicated and most massive game ever produced. Sheldon loved it because there was a lot of statistics to keep track of. But needless to say, SPI was its own entity. They experimented with science fiction fantasy games like this, especially as science fiction fantasy became more popular. Thank you, Dungeons and Dragons. And so did Avalon Hill. By the way, Avalon Hill refused to produce Dungeons and Dragons, which is an interesting story for another day. But suffice to say, SPI went off on its own and created a whole bunch of games. It was a very interesting and fun game company, willing to try all sorts of very unique and crazy ideas, but it suffered from financial mismanagement and eventually collapsed in the mid 80s. And interestingly enough, and almost ironically, it was taken over by TSR.
Interesting. So, introduction. Rising from the depths of Lake Michigan, the creature shook its massive head. It looked north on Route 42. Slowly, it pulled its massive body into the waters and began trudgingly down the superhighway. The 18-wheeler it ate provided the steel needed to maintain its strength. Panicked reports from motorists and residents came pouring into police, Army, and Air Force stations and bases. But the reports were too incredible. Only when Manitowoc,
I believe, is
Manitowoc vanishes into the creature's insatiable carnivorous maw, were the reports believed, and it was headed for Sheboygan. Trembling with apprehension, Milwaukee and Chicago lay beyond. Well, I mean, we're kind of from Chicago, so if they take out Milwaukee, that's okay. Send mail to rulesexplained@gmail.com.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. Yes, it's based on an actual city. Is Route 42 is a major highway that does go right through Sheboygan, and it is in line with Milwaukee and Chicago. So absolutely, this is quite hilarious. And like I said, as a youngling growing up, I had no clue that these were actual real places. I was like, it doesn't even sound real. But then again, Wisconsin didn't seem too real back in the day either.
So this is a 2-player game designed to be played for about an hour or so, right?
Yeah, just about an hour. One of those shorter type games, what they used to call beer and pretzel games.
Mm-hmm. So playing pieces. So we have playing pieces here. Playing pieces consist of 100 die-cut cardboard counters. We have our typical combat strength, the range, our movement allowance.
What
So
you
there's
see here is what SPI does a very good job on with all their games. They break up their rules into specific cases, like an outline 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. Each one is encapsulating a certain specific rules and or idea, rules, concept, or idea. And in this case, they give you a very good breakdown of what kind of counters you will be using and what the counters mean and how to interpret those counters.
okay. So we have a creature versus everybody else.
Yes.
So setting up for play. So the one guy picks a creature. They pick a Godzilla creature or a. Looks like they have a few. They got a flying one. They got like a Hulk looking one, a robot. They got a giant spider looking one.
All
Godzilla.
the all the different creatures like Godzilla, King Kong, Gamera, and all those other creatures that were so common in that trope of science fiction where the rampaging monster would go through your hometown, or you could represent, because this game has a little bit in common for those of you who are familiar with Ogre, or if you're not, go watch our video. The game Ogre by Steve Jackson came out, well, metagaming, came out 2 years before this, and that was about a large rampaging machine, and you had to somehow stop it before it destroyed your headquarters. Where in this case, instead of having a predetermined machine, you get to create your character of sorts, your creature, and rampage through the town. And it's not nearly as linear, say, perhaps as Ogre was, but it is still entertaining in the sense that you get to go ahead and imagine the complete destruction you're racking up, or I should say, that you are creating on the entire city of Sheboygan and its citizens and its guardians.
So the one player gets his one token, and then the other
Yep.
player gets everything else.
Yep.
How do we set this up to play?
Well, much like Ogre, you get a certain number of points depending on the scenario, and the
Mhm.
defender will go ahead and create his army, if you wish, from that points. Each point is going to be the equivalent of the combat strength. So if I have 30 points, as you can see by this screen, I could buy 30 cop units. You can't, because it's not actually possible, but that gives you an idea how the points work. So the point value is according to its combat strength. So if I want some surplus Sherman tanks, that's going to cost me 6 of my available points right off the bat. In
And the
addition
goal
to
is,
that,
I'm sorry, go on.
in addition to that, now the other guy, the creature, the other guy or gal will go ahead and build a creature based upon points as well, not the same number of points, but points that will go ahead and determine a variety of different characteristics. Anything from its ability to attack other units, to its ability to go ahead and crush buildings, to its movement allowance, to special abilities such as flame breathing and flying and so on and so forth.
So other than the fun of destroying your hometown, because if you wanted to, you could make this your hometown. I mean, you don't have
Yes.
to use the map of Sheboygan. You can use the map of my hometown, because as much fun as cool as that would be, because every kid has had a fantasy of getting a big giant monster and smashing big buildings.
In the 1970s and 1980s, it would be very easy for you to go ahead and get a map of your hometown at your local 7-Eleven. And you can go ahead and just get out your ruler and mark it off into grids. And if you could do me a favor, John, and just scroll to the last page where the map is, you could go ahead and grid with that map off.
Oops.
And you can go ahead and, just like you said, John, you can create your own map of your own town, and just all you'd have to do is locate major buildings and key it properly. And yes, absolutely, you could have a lot of fun rampaging through. Oh, I'm just going to mention some random cities here. You could go through Aurora, Illinois. You could go through Joliet. You could go through Peoria, Rockford, and any one of those larger cities.
Yeah, because as we were looking at the map, we realized that like this is actually a map from Sheboygan.
Yes, it's fairly abstract, but yeah, you can kind of see
abstract.
some of the ideas, the landmarks are there from Sheboygan. The river is pretty much fairly accurate for you would find it there. So you could find that, and the roadways are relatively accurate. I mean, I'm not going to go ahead and say this is the best town map of Sheboygan, but then again, I've never seen Sheboygan in 1979, so perhaps it's extremely accurate.
Very true. So we get our pieces, we throw them on the table. So the person playing the creature, I mean, it's just more than just picking a model and saying, hey, okay, I'm going to be the Godzilla one. You have to pick your abilities, your movement, and different things, its attributes.
Yep.
Okay, so the initial place. Okay, so the goal of the game is the monster has to go in there, destroy things.
Yes.
The things he destroys, he gets victory points for. He gets so many victory points, you win.
Yes.
Now, is this how does the defender win?
By not letting the monster win. It's a very straightforward and simple game. I suppose if you wanted to go ahead and look for what they used to call marginal victories or Pyrrhic victories, you could probably come up with a way to determine that. But really, the crux of the matter is if the monster is one victory point short of his or her victory, the human player wins.
So the sequence of play looks like it's very long and drawn out. The monster goes first, much like it did in the ogre game. The ogre went first. Here, the monster goes first. The monster moves. The monster attacks. He's done.
Yep.
It's his turn.
The
human player moves and then attacks, and he's done.
And there's the optional fire phase. If you're playing with a flaming monster, you could deal with fire spreading throughout your town, which is an interesting idea, actually.
So the firefighters will be able to put that out.
Yep.
Okay, so how do we move?
From area to area, there's no hexes or squares. It's an area-based movement rate, movement system, which was used by a lot of different games that came out. Off the top of my head, there was, I think the game was called Arnhem. Somebody's going to have to go ahead and get me on this. It was based on Operation Market Garden, but that was an area-based movement game. Marvel Superheroes would be a TSR role-playing game that would use area-based movement. So it's abstract.
Okay.
And you move your guys, your units, or your monsters on this grid, this, shall I say, abstract grid, and go from building to building, street to street, slugging it out.
Okay, and then we have the effects of terrain on movement.
Yeah, this is really a standard war game. In fact, SPI sometimes got accused of being too formulaic in their games, in which, move and fire, move then fire. There's your terrain effects. And then, of course, even resolving combat was done by an odds ratio table, which everybody was using. Even that game Ogre we talked about, very few games went away from odds ratios. I mean, even when you think about it, Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader used a version of odds ratio, just that you cross-reference a strength versus a defense to come up with a possibility of a kill. That's essentially just a simplified CRT, which uses odds ratio.
Very true. Stacking. We can stack units.
Not too many of them.
All right. It says only one monster is ever given. Two human units can be stacked together in a box.
Yep.
All right. So that's pretty much about it. So you
unless they are non-combats, and you can have as many as you want.
Okay. Overrunning humans.
This is
non-combat units. What's that?
This is interesting. It reminds me of the Ogre Overrun, but just a little bit more intense.
Okay.
The monster, as it's moving through, can decide if it wants to go ahead and attack a human unit. And in doing so, it uses some of its attack factors for that turn and can try to destroy it as it goes. And if you have enough attack factors, you can just rampage. Oh, that was a game in the 80s, wasn't it?
Which one?
That's right. There was a video game called Rampage, which turned into a rock movie, wasn't it? Oh my goodness sakes, it just popped into my head. Rampage. Okay, guys, for those of you listening, go ahead and make the comparison. Anyway, sorry, I digress. So yeah, you can move and kill things at the same time.
Combat. How is combat done? Now, you mentioned it was done in ratios. I don't see any combat tables here.
That's going to be at the end. SPI always put their charts either as a pull-out section in the center, or in the case of this box game, there you go. You have the combat charts there. So as you can see, you come up with your odds ratio. My attacking strength, let's say it's 20, and your defending strength, let's be more realistic. Let's say it's 5, and your defending strength is 2. Well, 5 versus 2 is 2.5 to 1. But as you can see, there's no 2.5. So you round down to 2 to 1.
Okay, so
I
do
go
you
to the 2
always
to 1
round down?
table. What's that?
Do you always round down?
Yep.
Okay.
And you got a 2 to 1, and you roll your die, and that'll tell you what happens. You can have a retreating option, which is an R. You can lose units, which is the number, or if you're not a human player, you lose strength from your monster, and you as the monster get to choose where you're losing that. You can take it off your defense, your movement, your ability to attack, or your ability to destroy buildings. So you have all sorts of options as far as how you're whittled down and destroyed. So unlike Ogre, where the defender got to choose which component of the Ogre they were trying to destroy, in this game, the defender, or I should say, in this case, the monster player gets to go ahead and decide what values he or she is losing as the monster gets pummeled.
And then it also has building destruction. So
Curiously enough,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm sorry, John. Curiously enough, your statistic, you have a separate statistic for building destruction. So you do it again. You come up with your ratio versus the strength of the building, which you can see on 5.3, the terrain effects chart. You can see the destruct strength. So if I have 6 building destruction strength and I'm attacking a low building, 6 versus a 2 is a 3 to 1. I have a better than 66% chance of being able to destroy that building with my mighty fists and teeth and whatever I'm destroying it with.
It looks like on this page, there's 2 of the identical charts here. So it looks like it's designed to be photocopied and then cut in half, one for each player.
Or, like many people did, they just simply took their scissors out and cut the charts in half and handed them to their other player.
Whoa, that's just crazy.
Yeah, nuts.
Okay, so that's movement, that's combat. I mean, attacking the monster. I mean, that's basically what it's basically what you've covered before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now in Ogre, I can say these 3 units are combining their attacks to attack the Ogre. Is it the same thing here where I can say these 4 units are going to attack the monster?
I believe that you can combine your attacks. Yes.
Okay. So it looks like attacking the monster. The monster may only attack units adjacent to the box. Let's have special attacks. Separate attacks, defense strengths. Okay, yeah. Combat results. You went over that. There are 2 types of combats: losses and retreat. So how do you kill the monster? Does he have a certain amount of hit points?
Basically, when it loses the ability to go ahead and inflict damage upon your city, you have won. So let's say you destroy its attack strength and its building attack strength. Well, you can walk all over the city you want, you big ugly monster. But if you can't actually destroy anything, I've won. You can also immobilize it, and if you immobilize it and there's no more targets within range, guess what? You've won. So the monster creature, the monster player, I should say, has to be very careful about how it's reducing itself as it gets whittled down by the human defenders.
Okay, so if I was the human defender and I did some attacking and it took damage, so the way it's recorded is the monster removes attack strength.
Yes.
Okay, and then when he's out of attack strength, he's done.
Well, not technically, because you have different abilities. So if we kind of go down, and if you scroll down to, because it's not really explained very well, except at the very beginning, at the very end. You have the following abilities. You have attack strength, you have defense strength, destruction strength, which is your ability to attack those buildings, as I said.
Which page are you on? I'm on section 12.
I am there on page 4. Historical notes. There you go.
Gotcha.
So the historical notes are very interesting because the SPI did this all the time. They give you some historical background. In this case, it's not historical background. They give you examples of famous monsters and did not actually give them an actual name. For example, Tyrannosaurus, if you look at all of his abilities, fire breathing, great height, jumping, lightning throwing, radiation. Okay, thank you, Godzilla.
Yes, Tyrannosaurus
But
was really known for his fire breathing. Yeah.
so, as I mentioned before, when you are creating your character, your monster, you split up your points between attack strength, defense strength, destruction strength, movement allowance, and then you have to spend some points. I think it's a quarter of your points on special abilities. So you go ahead and you decide what kind of special abilities you want, which in this game it's a limited list, but in various gaming zines, magazines, as well as just home rules, everybody added all sorts of powers to this list to go ahead and increase the variety of different monsters you could be facing.
Okay, so under historic notes, we have Tyrannosaurus. The numbers are attack strength,
Yep.
destruction.
Defense strength is your second characteristic.
Okay. And then the third one is what again?
Destruction strength, which is your ability to tear down those all important buildings for victory points.
Oh, okay. So then as the human's attacking it, as he takes damage, the monster picks which one gets lowered.
Yes.
And then over time the ratio gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, I get it. Ooh, a flying turtle. We know what that is.
Mhm.
So how do I create a monster?
Well,
Insert
if you
joke
take
here.
a look,
Yeah.
if you take a look at just above historical notes,
Uh-huh.
it's called scenarios.
Oh,
And
okay.
those scenarios will tell you how many points the human player gets and how many points the monster has. So if you're playing the learning scenario, the human gets 25 and the monster gets 13. Now, it may seem extraordinarily imbalanced, but remember, the monster does not have to go ahead and go after the combat units. It can just basically leap around or fly around and avoid combat as much as necessary to get the victory points it needs by simply destroying buildings. It's
So
the human who has the hardest job here.
so as the monster, how many attacks do I get?
That's what the cool part is. I can split up my attacks, my attack points as much as I want. So let's say let's use the Tyrannosaurus as an example. I have 20 attack points. I could go ahead and target 5 different human units with